Welcome to the next video. We're looking at the opening page of the Bible, the dedication to King James. I found something that I think is really interesting and tells us a different history of who was involved in the production of the Bible. Ever since I began working with the book, I knew there was something here, but I just didn't know how to read it. The first thing I noticed was that the opening section is 40 words. That got my attention because of what I learned from Alexander Waugh about that number's association with Edward de Vere. But it's in the next section, beginning with the decorated letter G, where I had a suspicion there was a hidden message. I've posted other videos with attempts trying to decipher it, but I finally got it figured out. Before I get into it, I want to point this out. The first letter of the section is the decorated G, beginning the word great. In Freemasonry, the G in between the square and compass stands for geometry. By itself, the letter G also stands for the initial of God, the great architect of the universe. I'm confident this decorated G stands for God because of how the section ends. The last characters are a comma followed by the word some. To decipher what's here, we have to refer to what John Dee calls the primary alphabets of the three languages, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. In his work, Monos Hieroglyphica, Dee also says we have to focus on the shapes of the letters. A comma resembles the Hebrew character yod, which translates to the letter I. The word sum is a homophone of sum, S-U-M, which in Latin means am. We have a Hebrew character for I and a homophone of the Latin word for am. Yod sum translates to I am, which is another name for God. So the section begins and ends with God, which is fitting because God is the first and last, or Alpha and Omega. In between this beginning and end, we're going to find the Bible's true dedication. Alright, as we read each line, I'm going to refer to letters and words along the left side as acrostics and letters and words on the right as telestics. The first thing that stood out to me in this section is this acrostic. The letters R, S, O, and E are an anagram of rose. After that begins another spelling. R, then lowercase ww. The next two letters, the lowercase se, are typeset directly over the capital E. What we have here are two separate words, which is something I'd missed when I tried to solve this message before. RWWSE and capital E. So what does it spell? To read it, we have to refer back to the three languages, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, and their shapes. This is the Greek letter omega, or O in English. Notice how the lowercase omega looks like a W. Looking at the acrostic, you can see the similarity between the W's and lowercase omega. Since W looks like a lowercase omega, we read the W's as O's. This now spells R-O-O-S-E, spelling Rus, followed by a capital letter E. Rus is an Old English word for rose, but it also means praise, and E is used as an abbreviation for X, spelled EX, Latin meaning from, and we'll return to this later. To make the left side easier to read, I reduced the size of the decorated G. We've translated the acrostic spelling Rus, meaning praise, and E, Latin meaning from. So where do we start? Notice there are two sentences. The opening sentence beginning with great ends with a period, followed by the next sentence beginning with the word for. This is where we start reading. Kind of in the way Rosicrucians will sometimes encode their messages backwards, we begin with the second sentence instead of the first. A key to unlocking what's here is, starting with the word for, we're going to read downwards, line by line, every word beginning with a capital letter. In some cases, there might be a word like an article or preposition preceding the capitalized word that'll be included. Another key is, when we get to the last word of each side, the message moves clockwise. So we focus on the capitalized words as we read downwards, and then clockwise when we get to the end. You'll see what I mean by all this in a minute. To make everything easier to read, I've removed all the extraneous information. Again, the message starts with the second sentence. Going line by line, we focus on the words beginning with a capital letter. So the first word is for. Reading downwards, the next capitalized word is scion, preceded by our. The next line reads, Occidental Star and Queen. We're now at the end of the right side. After Queen, the message moves clockwise, shifting from the right side of the section to the left, towards the name Elizabeth. We're now on the left side of the section, and we're going to read the acrostic downwards, line by line, like we did with the right side. Starting from the top, the next word is great. Then sovereign, followed by a parentheses bracket. The bracket lets us know to stop reading any further on the line. We continue with the acrostic, and the next words are, of all mercies, comma. Then England, comma. Then royal. Next we read the acrostic letters pointed out earlier. R-O-O-S-E, spelling rus, meaning praise. Then E, short for X, Latin meaning from. Just like the word royal shared the R with the acrostic spelling of rus, the name Elizabeth shares the E acrostic for the Latin word for from. We're now at the end of the left side of the section. Like before, the message turns clockwise, this time from the left side towards the top of the right. It starts with Almighty God the Father, followed on the next line by of. Even though of isn't capitalized, it's the preposition before the next words that are read. And the last words are Your Majesties. The message ends where it began with the period before the word for. Altogether it reads, For our scion, Occidental Star, Queen Elizabeth, great sovereign of all mercies, England, royal praise from Almighty God, the Father of your Majesties. I read a quote off the internet that said Elizabeth was praised for her godlike mercy, and here she's being given royal praise from God and referred to as great sovereign of all mercies. And there's this. Following the period where the message began, we get a name we've seen many times in the Shakespeare canon. The word for is typeset directly beneath the letters T-I-E-S, spelling 4 T's, which can also be spelled out as 4-letter T's. It's on the same line where the only other capital letter is the R in royal. The gematria value of the letter R is equal to 17. So on the left side of the section is R equal to 17, and on the right, 4T. The dedication to Queen Elizabeth ends with Edward de Vere's number 174T. Also, the R where we get the 17 from begins the word royal. In video 51, I show how one page before the dedication, there's the Bible frontispiece, and in the inscription we find Edward Vere's initials, EV, 3 times, with each example connected to a word for king. There's also the letters OX hidden within the script of the word kings, printed over the 4th T along the telestic. So in the inscription we find examples of Edward Vere being referred to as a king, and in the dedication to Queen Elizabeth, we find his number 174T as part of the words royal and majesties. This got me thinking, maybe there's another message here. When the dedication to James is read, the word majesties is used in the possessive. Notice how, out of all the words here, scion is the only capitalized word that's neither an acrostic nor a telestic, or read as part of one. For example, unlike the words Almighty God, which precede and is read with the Father telestic, the word scion precedes nothing. It's in the middle, by itself, with Occidental Star printed beneath it. And even though they appear right before the word Queen, Occidental Star are the only words here printed in italics. Now when you read the dedication to James, it's clear that Elizabeth is being described as an Occidental Star. Occidental means relating to the West or being an inhabitant of the West. And if you look at a map of England, you'll see that the city of Oxford is west of London, the capital of England. And there's a single star on the Oxford coat of arms. So was Edward de Vere, who lived west of England's capital and had a single star on his coat of arms, the Occidental or Western Star. Also, the number of letters spelling Occidental Star is 17, Oxford's Earl number. With that in mind, let's read this again. Just like before, the words are read starting with the word for, but only the words along the sides, so Sion is skipped for now. It goes from for to the word queen, then clockwise to Elizabeth. Then the acrostic is read, Great Sovereign of all mercies, England, royal praise from. Then clockwise again to the telestic, Almighty God, the Father of your majesties. Then, instead of ending there, it spirals inwards towards Sion, the only information that's not connected to either side of the section. Altogether it would read, For Queen Elizabeth, great sovereign of all mercies, England, royal praise from Almighty God, the Father of your majesties, Sion, comma, then in italics, like it's a signature, 17 letters spelling Occidental Star, who, west of London and with a star on his coat of arms, could be Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. Queen Elizabeth was, and still is, known as the Virgin Queen. You may have seen this painting of her, today referred to as the pregnancy portrait because of the way she appears to be with child. David Shakespeare has done some extensive work on the subject, and you can check out his videos on YouTube. Now, if Elizabeth did have a scion or heir, and she was a virgin, then the father would have to be Almighty God. Of course, that didn't happen, but I think if there was anyone who might refer to God and then to himself, it was Edward de Vere. What I mean is, I've heard during that time using God's name, I am that I am, was something you just did not do. And it's been pointed out by other researchers that, as far as they know, there are only two people who used God's name, I am that I am, in their writings, Edward de Vere in a letter to his father-in-law, Lord Burleigh, and William Shakespeare in Sonnet 121, which is one of the two twice 11 sonnets covered in other videos. So if this is the message, royal praise from Almighty God, the Father of your Majesty's Sion, comma, Occidental Star, was Edward de Vere having a kind of blasphemous joke on the opening page of King James Bible. Elizabeth was the Virgin Queen, only God could be the father of a Virgin Sion, and de Vere was the father. Another idea, far less heretical, is that commas can be used to separate nouns, and maybe this can be read as a sequence of names. Royal praise from Almighty God, then instead of and, de Vere uses a comma to separate himself as the Father of your Majesty's Sion, then signs it Occidental Star. My belief is that Henry Rosalie, the 3rd Earl of Southampton, was Queen Elizabeth's heir, or scion. Similar to how Elizabeth's Bible dedication is read clockwise, in video 56 and its addendum, I found a message that's read counterclockwise on the Two Most Noble Henrys portrait of Rosalie and Henry de Vere. The message reads, King Henry, son of Tudor. So is Henry Rosalie the Majesty's Scion in the Bible dedication. There are also some that might see this video who believe Edward de Vere was Elizabeth's scion, and they'll read this as, Elizabeth was the Virgin Queen, God's the Father of her Majesty's Scion, and that scion is Edward de Vere, the Occidental Star. Is that why I keep finding references to him being a king in the Shakespeare works? Or did he believe himself to be a king because he fathered a royal son, Henry Rosalie? So which is the right one? I think the first example is cleaner. It ends where it begins with Almighty God, the Father of your Majesties, period, followed by 17 4T. However, the second example is interesting because it ends with the only italicized words Occidental Star, which could very well be describing Edward de Vere. If you've watched the video, please let me know which example you think it is. Whichever it is, the 1611 Bible's dedication to King James has a dedication from Edward de Vere to Queen Elizabeth hidden within the G or God section. And this might be what James gets. The opening lines are, "To the Most High and Mighty Prince James." All the text is capitalized on the first two lines. On the third line, it changes, and the three largest letters, which are all the same size, are P in Prince, and then with the name James, all the letters are capitalized, but the first letter, the letter I, is printed larger than the rest. And then the last of the large letters is the G in God. The three largest letters on the third line are P-I-G. Read with the first two lines, the hidden dedication to James might be, "To the Most High and Mighty Pig, Prince James, etc." The dedication to Queen Elizabeth didn't miraculously compose itself, and I think this shows that there were people behind the scenes working on the Bible. There's more on the page and in the book, some of which I've covered in other videos. If you enjoyed this one, please hit the thumbs up button, and let me know which dedication to Queen Elizabeth you think is the right one. Thanks for watching.